Hey, what's poppin', baby cakes, as the kids say. Recently I've been thinking about Artemis because the Artemis 2 mission's coming up, and I thought this might be a good time to have a quick ramble about how completely insane the entire Artemis program actually is. Let's talk about it. So, what is the Artemis program? Well, long story short, the United States got to the moon in the first place, realized that no one else was ready to do it yet, then they stopped going, and at some point they heard China's doing what? We've made a terrible mistake, and now they're going back again. True story. Well, I say they are. Obviously, NASA is the United States Space Agency, but there's a bunch of other national space programs that will get to send astronauts as well, like ESA, JAXA, a bunch of other ones I don't know how to pronounce properly. But to me, Artemis seems kinda complicated, a lot more so than the Apollo program, and not complicated in a technical way, more just complicated in a why the f*** are they doing it like this kind of way. See, the Apollo program developed this one big beefy motherfucker of a rocket called the Saturn V, huge super heavy lift vehicle, absolutely insane. And NASA sunk a huge amount of budget into developing just this one rocket with the goal of making that one rocket capable of getting everything they needed to the moon in one go. They didn't need to launch multiple rockets and then dock things together in orbit and then go to the moon. They just launched the one rocket and it would go straight to the moon. Well, not straight to the moon. Part of the spacecraft had to undock, turn around and redock to itself before they went onto the moon. But still, generally speaking, it was a relatively straightforward, straight shot kind of a deal. They launched the Saturn V, got the necessary bits and pieces up into space, configured the spacecraft properly in space, drifted to the moon for 3 days, got into a lunar orbit, detached the lander from the command module. The lander then went down to the moon and landed for a bit, and then they kind of did the whole process in reverse. Launched from the moon, left the legs behind because no one lives on the moon, so no one gives a shit about moon pollution, redocked to the command module, get the fuck out of there. It's relatively straightforward. Now, it gets to be relatively straightforward because all they wanted to do was get a couple of people and maybe a rover down to the surface so they can twat about for a few days and then come home. The Artemis program is at least vaguely gesturing towards long-term lunar habitation. To be clear, actually doing that is definitely not a solved problem, at least not inside of the existing Artemis mission architecture, but they're trying to make something happen, so respect for that. And part of making something happen when you're a government agency is getting politicians to let you actually do the shit that you need to do, which means that you need to convince politicians to give you money, which means people who have dedicated their lives to being engineers and scientists and people who are actually productive and responsible members of society need to go groveling to a bunch of smug pricks who control the pile of money, which does tend to lead to a lot of baffling decisions. Alright fellas, we're going back to the moon. I need a rocket system that can get us there. Okay fellas, this rocket system that you made, it's a pile of shit, get rid of it. I think we should have a new rocket system, and we're gonna use it to kidnap an asteroid and then go to Mars. Sir, respectfully, that's completely fucking retarded. Guy gets hit by a drone strike says what? What? Alright everybody, on account of me not liking Obama, we're going back to the moon again, and instead of a spaceship that's gonna go capture an asteroid, we're gonna make a space station around the moon. It's gonna be a great space station, the best space station. It's gonna distract everybody from the Epstein files, it's gonna be great. Alright fine, so we finally got a goddamn plan. So Artemis 1 was unmanned. It just flew around the moon. Now you may be asking, why did we do that if we've already been to the moon? We know how to fly around the moon, right? Well, because this time we were testing out a near rectilinear halo orbit. Why? For the banter? I don't know. Why does anyone do anything? Well, there are reasons, but it's basically just fairly efficient to get into that orbit. And also, they mainly care about the south pole of the moon, so if you have your closest point into the moon over the northern hemisphere, then you whip around the northern hemisphere really quickly so you can spend most of your time looking at the southern hemisphere. This is the orbit that the Lunar Gateway Station is ultimately going to be in, and since it has line of sight with the southern hemisphere and with the Earth almost all the time, it means the station can act as a communication relay. But also, it is quite a delicate orbit, balanced right on the edge of the moon's sphere of influence, again, just kind of adding to the general complexity of the whole thing. Okay, Artemis 2, that's the one that's coming up. That's when they're going to have actual people riding on it. We've got John America, the Maple Syrup Warrior, Ellen Ripley, and I'm drawing a blank and I don't want to get cancelled. Part of what they're trying to do is have a more diverse crew because obviously it was all like Caucasian, male, American test pilots and shit like that flew to the moon during the Apollo days. I think they're trying to represent sort of a general sample of humanity a little bit more with this, which I'm not necessarily mad at. Yeah, fucking go for it. It seems like one of those things that people are either like, well, yes, they should do that, or they're like, oh, I can't believe they're doing this. Whereas I'm taking the most based stance of all, which is just, I don't really give a shit. So yeah, these guys are going to swing around the moon and come straight back. It's just a flyby mission. They're not even going into the near rectilinear halo orbit like Artemis 1 did. They're literally just swinging around and coming straight back on a trajectory that automatically returns you to the Earth if something fucks up, which is essentially how they did the Apollo missions. That's actually how Apollo 13 didn't end up with a bunch of people dying when it went wrong. And fun fact, since these guys are going to be taking a wider trajectory around the back of the moon than the Apollo astronauts did, these guys are going to be the human beings who have been the furthest from the Earth ever, which is pretty cool. I wish I could get that far away from the rest of you. Ew. Anyway, Artemis 3 is meant to be the one where we actually land on the moon for the first time, which is particularly confusing since the Lunar Gateway station that's meant to be a part of the Artemis program won't be there until Artemis 4, so you can just, so we can get to the moon fine without the Gateway Station. So why the fuck do we need the Gateway Station? Why is the US taxpayer spending literally billions of dollars on this? What the fuck? What am I missing? Give me one reason why this isn't the catastrophically stupid idea it sounds like. It literally costs fuel to stop there on the way to the moon. Oh, but you can dock your lander there so it can wait for the crew to show up in the spaceship from Earth and then they can transfer over in there. Yeah, why don't you just put the fucking lander, just put it in orbit. Just don't dock it to any, why does it need to be docked to a fucking space station? What is the point in the space station? What does this accomplish? Also, the space station was designed with small landers in mind, but then they chose SpaceX's fucking Starship, so the Starship's like 8 times the size of the space station, which means the maneuvering module on it probably isn't going to work properly. How is this not a disaster? Maybe I'm totally missing the point of all of this. I just don't. Oh, God fucking damn it. This is what happens when politicians decide things. There was literally a moment in the history of this space program's development where the SLS, which is the name for the rocket system that they're using, was being developed without even a clear idea of what they were going to use it for. It was literally just, hey, we'll build a rocket and we'll figure out what to do with it later. It literally just turning NASA into a fucking jobs factory, which I always found a slightly bizarre thing to care. Like, I could make 100 jobs right now if I told 50 people to dig a hole and told another 50 people to fill the hole in afterwards, but those gifted 150 IQ people amongst us might be able to tell that that doesn't fucking accomplish anything. Sorry to interrupt, this is just a quick message to say, statistically speaking, you're probably not subscribed, so I'll make you a deal. Press the subscribe button and I won't come over to your house and do this.
It's spherical! Spherical!
Alright, thanks. Back to the video. The only actually legit sounding justification for the Lunar Gateway Station that I've actually heard is that if we hypothetically manage to manufacture rocket fuel on the moon and do it efficiently enough that we could transport it to the Gateway Station and use the Gateway Station as a depot to refuel spaceships going off to Mars, conceivably that might help. But even then, that justification is basically like saying, what if in a million billion squillion years we have a bunch of high-tech doodads and gizmos and doohickeys? Okay, but we fucking don't have them. What is this hypothetical? Also, actually, scratch that. Couldn't you just dock straight to the thing on the way to Mars? Yeah, no, never mind. I think even that doesn't work. Anyway, sorry, I'm coming off as a huge bummer in this episode. Jesus Christ, what the hell's wrong with me? This is what happens when I don't use a script. I'm just a whingy bitch. Oh, by the way, I'm not done whinging. Sorry, I just thought of one more thing to bitch about. So there's not just the SLS that we're using. We're using a bunch of different private companies, right? Private contractors that have got their own launch systems, and they're going to essentially provide the landers to land on the moon. We've got the Blue Origin one, and we've got the SpaceX one. Again, seems a little complicated to have so many different types of rockets involved and several different types of lander. But then again, it probably is actually a good thing. You've got competition, you've got probably more flexibility, like in case something gets delayed, maybe you've got an alternative. So yeah, that's probably a good thing overall. My personal psychological desire for simplicity probably doesn't trump all the benefits if we're actually being honest, but I am still interested to see how inconvenient it's going to be using what is essentially a variant of the Starship as a lander. Like, this thing's like landing a small skyscraper on the moon. This thing is fucking massive, and in order to get it to the moon, just because of the way the Starship system works, you're going to have to do a lot of orbital refueling with it, which is quite clunky. Like, I know a lot of people are quite critical of the Starship architecture in general, with the fact you have to do so much orbital refueling before you can actually go anywhere with it. I think if they can design the vehicle to be reliable enough, hopefully that won't be an issue. It really comes down to how reliable the fuel transfer system is and how rapidly and safely you can turn around the whole orbital launch system so you can do a lot of launches and refill really quickly. But yeah, it'll just be interesting to see how much of a pain in the ass it is to have to launch like 15 different vehicles just to get one moon mission to work. But hey, we'll see. I'm relatively optimistic, provided shit doesn't get fucking cancelled again. You never know, SpaceX might just make their own fucking moon base, I guess. But hey, as much as I bitch about everything, I'm really looking forward to Artemis 2. I'll be watching it live, maybe some of you guys will be too. And best of luck to the crew. Godspeed. Or, it's me, so atheism velocity. Anyway, as always, thanks to my elite level supporters, Thunderbolt 22A10, who pressure washed the moon and that's why it's grey. Nomad Greg, who can breathe in a vacuum. Andrew Mole, who's been exiled to the Van Allen radiation belts. John Bejarano, who visited the moon and just kind of thought it was fine. JDK, who's the only person so far to have taken a handful of unidentified pills in low Earth orbit. Mutantious Doom, who developed a Methalox full-flow staged combustion rocket engine just to power his tricycle. Stormester Ritter, who uses moons as exercise balls. Nikita Lurie, who drives his kids to school in the Opportunity rover. Aaron Rowe, whose day job is waxing Jeff Bezos' head until it functions as a solar death ray. Bonk Chunk, who left his Yu-Gi-Oh collection in Shackleton Crater. And thanks to all my other supporters support us too. Don't forget to join the Patreon or the channel membership if you want to be featured in my video credits or chat on Discord. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Over and out.